Hey friends, I'm really happy because springtime is just around the corner and maybe you're thinking of growing some hops, but you don't know whether to buy rhizomes or live hops plants. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Max Raphael here from Hops World. Tip number 53, hops rhizomes or hops plants. Which are you going to buy? Let's do it. So, as you can see, the mailman came, actually FedEx, and dropped off some rhizomes right here and some hops plants. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the difference between hops rhizomes and hops plants. And there's many pros and many cons for each one, and we're going to go through step by step so you can decide for yourself if you're going to get rhizomes or plants in order to start your hop garden. Let's start with the rhizomes. They come, as you can see, and plants, they come in a box, as you can see. So we'll talk about shipping first. One difference between rhizomes and hops plants. Rhizomes are definitely easier to ship. This I actually cut open, you saw in the beginning of the video, and it's just a little bubble wrap. Simple little bubble wrap FedEx envelope with a Ziploc and our rhizomes inside. Real simple to ship compared to hops plants. So this box had 2 plants in it. They do have bigger boxes where you can get a tray with, I think, 18 plants or 21 plants even. And as you can see, they come little plants, typically about this size, depending on the vendor. I love these little square 1-pint hops pots. They fit nice together before we plant them. And what they do is they put this little stick in the box to keep the plants from turning over. You can see the box is labeled this side up. Although this box came when I picked it up, it was on its side laying there. Unfortunately, the FedEx people, the mailmen, don't pay much attention. But these hops plants are in perfect condition, as you can see. And so are the rhizomes. So either way, typically the vendors that sell these plants or these rhizomes know what they're doing, and they'll send you plants that are in good shape. There was one time I did get 3 big trays of plants, and unfortunately the box, when it arrived, was completely upside down. It looked like it was crushed, like it got driven over maybe. I'm not sure, but man, it was pretty ugly. Fortunately, the vendor, I called them and they sent brand new plants, and I even saved about half of the old plants too. So typically, if something happens in shipping, you can always make your claim with the shipper, but if you talk to the vendor, they usually will help you out, especially if you're a regular customer. So, as far as a check, definitely rhizomes win as far as the ease of shipping. They're real simple to ship. Now, next thing we're going to talk about is variety availability. So, if you're on a small scale basis and you need to source rhizomes, there are a few sites online that sell rhizomes, but typically there's not so many different varieties available as hops plants. There are 2 big hops plants growers out there in Michigan that have over 20 varieties. The one I think even has more. The one even has some of its own proprietary varieties. So there are tons of varieties available in plants. Now, I think one of the biggest vendors of rhizomes is Yakima Valley Hops. I've bought thousands, literally probably over 10,000 rhizomes from them. But typically they have 5 or 6 varieties available each year, maybe 7. Julie Kane from Sandy Ridge Farm that I buy my hops plants from now. I highly recommend Julie and Sandy Ridge Farms. If you want clean plants, they only sell plants that are sourced from the USDA Clean Plant Network. They have a very rigorous protocol to keep these plants disease and fungus free. I've never had a problem with any plants I've ever gotten from her, and I've been buying plants for years now. So I'll put a link at the bottom of the page in the description to Yakima Valley Hops, where they right now have hops rhizomes. We're early in the spring, and to Sandy Ridge Farms, get a hold of Julie if you want some plants. But there are other vendors out there, nothing against them. Look online and see what you can buy. Now, variety-wise, if you're planning on a huge scale, typically you're gonna have to buy a lot of plants or get a lot of rhizomes. In Yakima Valley, I think everyone plants with rhizomes, basically. But they get them from the neighbor, or they get them from a neighboring farm where they have thousands and thousands of plants where they can literally cut thousands of rhizomes each year. And it's funny, they actually cut the rhizomes as a waste product. They cut the extending rhizomes that go into the rows to help the energy of the plant grow up and not out. So they end up throwing away tons and tons of rhizomes. And they do sell them. And if you reach out to farmers, typically in the spring, if they're cutting rhizomes, they'll be glad to sell you some. So as far as variety availability, we're going to have to give the check mark to the plants. But that's here in the United States. Now in some areas, it's not even possible, I don't think, to get plants. For example, in Australia, I think they only sell rhizomes, but then again, they are disease-free. In Brazil, you can only get plants legally. So, depending on where you live, it could be different, but in the United States, the check mark goes to the plants. So, the next thing, talking about this spring, we are here in mid-March in Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania in northeast United States. And it is still not spring, obviously. Spring starts on March 20th, but it's just starting to get warm here. Now, there are available plants just like this, very beautiful. And I just noticed on Yakima Valley Hops website, they are now shipping rhizomes. So, you can get rhizomes typically in the United States only this time of year for the next 2 months or so. And that's it, because the plants only grow rhizomes over the winter. Now in Europe, I have a friend who gets rhizomes through the winter, but you definitely can't get rhizomes in the summer. After about May, you're not going to get any more rhizomes in the northern hemisphere. But plants you can pretty much get up until October, November. You definitely have more availability of time to buy plants throughout the year. So if you're looking for rhizomes and you're in June or July and you can't get them, you can get plants. I have planted plants in July that flowered that first year. I'll never forget my cashmere babies, and they were little. And we definitely had a bunch of cones for the first year. We planted them very, very late. So the time of year where you can get plants, the check definitely goes to the plants. Now, the price, probably one of the biggest factors that people think of and are concerned about, is the cost of buying rhizomes and the cost of a hops plant. Rhizomes sell on Yakima Valley site for $10. And one you can get anywhere from about $4 to $6 on other sites. A plant from the 2 biggest vendors in the country sell from anywhere from $9 to about $12 each. So you say easily 3 for $10 or about $10 each. The check mark goes to the rhizomes. But wait a minute. There's a little bit to be said about this, because on big commercial hops farm, I've watched them plant rhizomes, and they plant minimal 3 to 5 rhizomes per hill, which a hill is one planting spot. When they say you plant your plants every 36 inches or 42 inches, each spot is called a hill. And with rhizomes, they never just plant one on big farms. They do it real quickly. They don't have time to take special care of the rhizomes, so they put at least 3 and typically 4 or 5 rhizomes in each hole to make sure that at least one of them grows. So if you figure it in, 3 or 4 each, $10 or $12 compared to $10 or $12 for one plant. And one of these plants, you're not going to need to plant more than one. I'm going to pull this plant out of the pot and show you. Typically these plants that you buy, especially from these 2 big vendors, are already into their 2nd year, which means that they have rhizomes already starting. They have full root ball right out to the edge of the cup. You can see the roots in the rhizome right here at the top of the plant. So these plants are ready to go right into the ground as soon as the first frost is over where you live. So the check mark, if it's just straight price, goes to the rhizome. If you talk price per quantity you need to use, it's equal. We'll give them both a check mark. So now, storing your plants or your rhizomes. Rhizomes are very easy to store in your refrigerator for at least a couple months. Basically, the way they arrive to you is the way you put them in the refrigerator. Hops plants are a little bit more difficult. We're here in the beginning of March. If you live up in Canada and the last frost is until May, I definitely wouldn't suggest buying hops plants now. We're about 2 weeks away. They actually say to wait till Mother's Day in our area, but come April, these babies will go in the ground. And if it's still cold, I'll actually replant these in bigger pots before they go in the ground. You want to wait till the last frost with either rhizomes or hops plants. So the ease of storage, the time you can store, definitely a check mark to the rhizomes. Now we talk about plant vigor. Which is going to be stronger? The plants or the rhizomes? Well, when they first take off, these plants, you can see they're already growing. They definitely have a head start. So in the beginning, the check mark definitely goes to the hops plant. But by the end of the year, I found that rhizomes are going to grow almost the same or just the same or could be stronger than a hops plant, depending on the variety, the soils, your nutrients. So by the end of the first year, I put a check mark on both rhizomes and hops plants because they could both be equally vigorous. So the last thing I'm going to talk about when comparing rhizomes to hops plants is the availability to check the plants and to get clean plants. When I mean clean plants, I mean virus-free and hopefully fungus-free. They don't have downy mildew, powdery mildew, and don't have any of the myriad of dozens of viruses and diseases that can affect a hops plant. With rhizomes, there's absolutely no way to test a rhizome to see if it has any of these diseases. You can look typically at your rhizome to try to see if it looks healthy. You pull it out, you make sure it's nice and firm, there's nothing wrong, there's no darkness going through the root, which could be a sign of disease. Your little sprouts or nodes are nice and white and look nice and clear. There's no black fungus, no dried outness. Well, that's about all you can do is look at the rhizome and give a physical, visual idea of how it looks. With the hops plant, you could definitely do the same thing. Take a good look at it, check for any bugs or anything you might see, disease, ugly leaves. Pull it out, look at the roots, make sure they look healthy, nice and white. But what you can do with hops plants is you can send the leaves to be tested. If you're planting a lot of plants, like an acre of one variety, even 100 or a couple hundred, and you're serious about growing hops, it might be a good idea when you receive your plants from your vendor to send them to be tested. Make the investment and have them tested and make sure they're clean. That's probably the most important thing, definitely the most important thing. Now, as far as clean plants go, there at least were, the past few years, 2 laboratories in the United States that sell plants that they make in vitro. And in vitro means in a little test tube where the sanitation and phytosanitary requirements are kept to a maximum standard. I'm not sure if they're still in business. The one I looked up I can't find online anymore. The other one I see that they still sell Cascade. They used to sell about 10 varieties or 15. Yeah, about 15. I don't see them listed anymore. I know hops wasn't a big thing for them, so they might be bailing on the whole hops. But other than that, the only place I know is Sandy Ridge Farms that only sells USDA sourced hops. Now they don't even have any plants or any fields at their facility where they could have diseases. All they have is the little babies. So there's no guarantee, even the USDA, if you get plants straight from the Clean Plant Network, there's no guarantee that there's not disease or fungus. So like I said, a couple plants, you take a chance, you take a risk, you buy plants from someone that you know has clean plants, you get your rhizomes, or if you get plants from a vendor, known vendor that sells clean plants, you're probably good. But on a larger scale, definitely send them to be tested. So as far as phytosanitary or clean plants, the plants definitely get the check mark over the rhizomes. And I make that check mark the biggest of them all because I think that's the most important difference between rhizomes and plants. Well, before I finish up the video, there's a couple things that I wanted to mention. First, the prices that I put up there for the rhizomes and for the plants are to buy a couple plants, okay? If you're thinking of planting 100 plants or an acre of hops, please don't get shocked. There's a huge discount for quantity purchase of plants and rhizomes, okay? And the other thing, really important, I mentioned Yakima Valley Hops and Sandy Ridge Farms. I personally bought approximately 10,000 plants, mostly 4 to 5 years ago, and over 10,000 rhizomes. And I've bought plants from vendors that weren't vendors, just from people. I bought rhizomes that weren't rhizomes, they were just little roots. I've gotten plants that were just a little, basically a stem that was put in a hydroponic setup with some roots in a little plastic cup. You wouldn't believe what I've gotten when I purchase plants. So I'm not opposed to any vendors out there. I just know from my personal experience, Sandy Ridge Farm and Yakima Valley Hops are reputable companies. They sell a nice product. They have great service. They've always served me well. I get no discount. I get nothing free. The only thing I've ever gotten free from them is stickers. They throw a little swag in the box. You can see here, there's a Sandy Ridge Farm sticker and a Yakima Valley Hop sticker right there. But that's it. I'm just trying to pass on to people my knowledge and my experience. If you want to contact me for other vendors out there, just write me and I'll let you know, okay? Thanks, guys. So there you go, the differences between rhizomes and plants. Now get online because spring is here and it's almost time to plant. Thanks for being with me today, folks. I hope you liked our tip. If you liked, put a thumbs up. subscribe to our channel. We're going to have lots of tips about planting rhizomes and planting plants in the next few weeks. Cheers to life.